Welcome to the Voice of San Diego podcast in partnership with News Radio 600 Kogo. I am Scott Lewis, the CEO and editor-in-chief at Voice of San Diego. And coming up on the show, there had been some controversy about whether the mayor and San Diego City Council would have to dip into reserves to handle their budget deficit. Now it appears they have no choice. We'll explain how bad the city's finances are getting. And South County is now home to a massive hotel and convention center, many years in the making. Everybody's stoked. The mayor of Chula Vista, like all South Bay officials, was very proud, but he quickly distanced himself from his own real estate company that appears ready to cash in on an adjacent project. We'll explain. And Jakob's got an update from the telenovela that is the Grossmont Union High School District. Stay with us. We got a lot for this great show. Joined in the studio this week by managing editor Andrea Sanchez Villafana. What's up, Sanchez?
Oh my God.
Is that weird?
It's going to freak people out. Sounds weird.
Yes, it is official though, right? It's going to be Sanchez now.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
It's Thank you. Yeah. We got married this weekend.
Got married. Beautiful place.
Yes. Quixote Farm in Palma Valley. Shout out to Laura and Skip. They're the owners. It's an Airbnb. It's beautiful, beautiful spot.
Yeah.
So how did you choose which one of your hyphenated last names was getting the S?
Well, Lopez is a little basic.
Uh-huh.
And Sanchez is also basic.
So Lopez Sanchez didn't really...
They can just replace each other,
Okay.
And Villafana I think is really cool, and that's my mom's last name, so
All right.
Yeah,
Lopez lost.
They're replacement level names, but Villafana
that one's cool.
has a value added. Yeah. So yes, it was a great wedding.
Scott was there. Did you dance to the September song?
I did.
I specifically picked it up for you.
I was walking away to go to the bathroom, and then it played, and I was like, "Whoa!"
Yeah.
Going back to the
I picked it for you, and then I was looking for you, but I was just being pulled different directions, and I was like, damn, I was like, I hope Scott's dancing, because that was his song.
Yeah, the 21st night of September is my day. Yeah, my
Okay.
night.
Birthday.
They made it for me. No big deal.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, it was a great night. It was a little dusty. Your dress got dirty.
Destroyed, yeah. I have a photo. It looks like an ombre effect. It's like dark dirt at the very base, and then it kind of gets lighter and finally turns white again. But yeah, dropped it off at the cleaners this morning, so we'll see if they can work some magic. And I posted a photo on Instagram, and everyone was like, save it for the memories, don't do anything to it. And I was like, no, there's like physical chunks of dirt and grass stuck to the lace. I just don't think it's appropriate to put it away this way.
Well, it was great. One of the great parts too is the ceremony was like 2 minutes long.
That is always nice.
There was no big lecture about God or anything. It was just like, all right, man and wife, kiss her. Let's go.
Let's go, baby. Let's go party. My sister-in-law, I think, got very nervous, and she sped through the speech.
No, it was great.
I just remember in my head, I was like, oh my God, this is going really fast. Like, oh my gosh. But then afterwards, everyone kept stopping us, and they're like, that was the best ceremony ever. 2 minutes, and we were done. But you know who wasn't happy? My day of coordinator. She was like, I had just dropped you off, and we're walking back down to set stuff up. And then we heard cheering, and we were like, she literally went from the ceremony, which was just a few feet away from the reception. She's like, I just heard cheering, and I was like, what's going on? Why are they cheering? And then her assistant's like, the ceremony's over.
Horde of people start walking down. Where's the food? Give us a drink.
But they were amazing. No, it was really fun. I looked like a princess angel, and
yes, you did.
I do every day.
Some people, it's a different it's thing for you. That was you at your purest.
Yeah.
Glowing and just taking
Living
it in
life.
and posing. It was just that was
center of attention.
Yeah. Very well done. I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Jacob he refused to acknowledge it. You don't believe in marriage?
I have been in a relationship for 14 years this year. and we have not gotten married, mostly because we just kind of think it's a bummer. Not for everybody, but for us.
Okay.
And of course, I would have loved to be there had I not
Yeah.
caught a nasty
Jacob got
cold.
sick.
Yeah.
I'm very
Sure,
sorry.
Sure.
Well, if you guys ever change your mind, I can plan for you.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
will
All right.
miss that.
Well, and rest assured, I'll be there at your next wedding.
Yes.
I'm just kidding.
Wedding number 2.
We used to have a joke in the office about the county grand jury. So this isn't the grand jury that like indicts people or whatever. There's the county civil grand jury that impanels and becomes like this kind of investigative journalist entity, right? They go and they dig into something, they produce a big report, and the only accountability mechanism built into their job is that the agency they do a report about has to respond. It's like and so, it's not guaranteed to change anything, but it can be good. Now, it used to be pretty weak, the stuff they would do. Like it was these random topics, or it was just not doing. We used to just joke about like, oh, the county grand jury is going to get on it. But lately they've been more interesting, and they just dropped another one. Jacob, you wrote about it in the in Voice San Diego, and it was about the San Diego Unified School District and the way it handles bonds. Now, remember, you can pass bonds to build stuff or to repair stuff in a school district with a vote of the people of 55% or more. And those bonds, I don't think it's always clear because bond doesn't sound like tax because they're different words, but it is a tax. It authorizes the district to raise property taxes up to a certain amount based on how much they're borrowing, right? And I think the main thrust, and you can correct me, Jacob, of their report was it is not clear to voters what they're approving when they do that their taxes are going to go up, that they're on top of previous tax increases, that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, so there were a couple main threads. That was certainly one of them. The main thread was like, hey, you're not being entirely clear with voters about what everything of this is. Yeah. And so the tax thing was one, right? They said basically that the district had not made it clear enough to voters in ballot summaries and voter information that these new taxes that will be in place because of bonds that were passed were in addition to old taxes. In some instances, they had kind of hinted at this, but over the years, the language has become more and more vague. And it's important to remember, San Diego Unified has been incredibly successful at passing these bond measures.
Yeah.
More successful than pretty much any other school district in the region. They've passed 4 in the past 17 years.
Well, probably because they're vague.
There you go.
Let's do a little history. So right now you can go to almost any San Diego Unified school and it's either brand new or it's under construction. It's wild. Like there's a lot of stuff going on. And it's that way. There's always there's a big budget deficit and they're talking about cutting programs and such too. And so you can get in a situation where a cluster like ours has new performing arts venues being created while they're cutting the performing arts programs. And it's like that's a case because it's a lot easier for them to pass taxes to build stuff than it is for them to pass taxes to pay for teachers.
And those are 2 discrete funding sources, right?
Yeah.
So they've, over the past 17 years, they've passed $11.6 billion in bond measures. That money cannot be spent on the staff for the brand new, performing arts center that they built. It can only be spent on that performing arts center. So this money, this big, gigantic $11.6 billion pot of money, it can only be spent on facilities.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly why you go through the district and there are these state-of-the-art facilities, even as they're having to, potentially issue a few layoff notices or cut certain programs.
So going back about 25 years or more, they did the first one. And this was
2008. 2008 was the most recent of these 4.
Yeah, but before that there was one called
4.
Prop M, right? And that was a big deal in San Diego. It was like this, everybody got together and said like, we're going to fix up these schools. They pointed to Lincoln High School was just a mess, had been troubled for so long and just deserved, this investment, all these places. And so it was like the whole community got together and there's this big, like, these are exactly what we're going to spend all these dollars on, these projects, all these things. They pass it. And then successively since then, they've gotten lazier and lazier about it. Like to the point where they used to just lay out all these projects they would do explicitly. And the grand jury calls this out, right? They lay out all the projects they were going to do, like so specifically. And now they just say like the same, they just take the boilerplate language from the last time and they just copy and paste it. And they're like, it's literally like, hey, ChatGPT, tell me what we might spend money on. And it turns out like, oh, you might replace, you even collected this ballot statements of the last 4 times that they've asked for support about air conditioning. And
so 2008. Included in the ballot measures, they have to basically describe what they're going to do with all this money should voters approve it. And as you mentioned, over the past 4 ballot measures, they've gotten progressively more vague about exactly what they were doing. That's one of the things that the grand jury hit them on. But in all of those ballot measures, let's see if you as an eagle-eared listener can recognize any patterns here. So in 2008, this would have been measure
S.
So 2008, this would have been measure S. The district wrote in the ballot measure that they would, quote, replace or modify aging heating, ventilation, and air cooling systems with energy-efficient heating and air cooling systems, parentheses HVAC, including installing energy management systems. 2012, this was measure Z.
Yeah.
Okay. In 2012, this was measure Z. They said that they would, quote, replace or modify aging heating, ventilation, and air cooling systems with energy-efficient heating and air cooling systems, parentheses, HVAC, including installing energy management systems. 2018, this was measure YY. Quote, replace or modify aging heating, ventilation, and air cooling systems with energy-efficient heating and air cooling systems, parentheses, HVAC, including installing energy management systems. And most recently, 2022, measure U, quote, replace or modify aging heating, ventilation, and air cooling systems with energy-efficient heating and air cooling systems, parentheses, HVAC.
I mean, they might as well
installing energy management
systems. Might as well put in there, like, we're going to build stuff.
Like stop asking us questions. I have like 2 theories. One, they just realized that it would be easier to keep things vague because then they can choose different things as they come up,
that's
right?
it. Because they actually would get in trouble if they didn't build exact things.
Right.
So if they just say they're going to build stuff, then nobody can hold them accountable for either building it or not building it.
Well, and it's funny because so much of what was in this grand jury was stuff that when I first started as an education reporter, this is one of the first kinds of things that I had to cover, right? It was Measure U. Mm-hmm. And these were all things that I was like grappling with in my reporting. I noticed this duplicative language. I asked the district officials about that. I noticed that the language had become more vague. I asked the district officials about that. And it was hysterical to see all of this represented in this grand jury report.
My second theory, though, is that the person who worked there, who's responsible of writing these like elaborate language for these things, they couldn't afford to keep that person anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But they kept getting money for facilities, but not for the person who was writing these nice bonds.
So when I asked back in 2022, the district exactly why the language had become so much more vague, they basically said that this was the feedback they'd gotten from past ballot measures was that it confused voters to have all of this duplicative stuff, right?
Accountability can be confused.
Yeah. So they gave me this quote that was, quote, past stakeholder questions indicate listing similar scope for each school was confusing. The Measure U solution remedies this complexity issue by listing scope of work covered by bond district-wide at all schools, which will also simplify and shorten the voter guide, making it more accessible to voters.
I think that there's a real serious thing underneath this, which is like, this is funding for schools. There's always this contention that taxpayers are reluctant to fund schools. And I always point to this and say, like, that's not true. They have approved 4 significant tax increases in the last 20 years in San Diego by like significant margins. And those are not small things. Like if you had like a normal sort of $400,000 or $500,000 house and it's assessed at that level, you're paying, $1,200, $1,300 more per year now than you were before. That's not insignificant. And it doesn't count to all the collections of per student funding that people point to when they're like San Diego or California doesn't support, individual students the way that, they should or have or whatever. Like there's a lot of money being poured into these. And it feels like it went from that sort of, we're building specific things that we need to. We're getting investment that has like crumbled to like, let's grab everything we possibly can, as much as we can. They even call out in grand jury that like they weren't making it clear that they were asking for tax increases and more bond capacity, even though they hadn't borrowed all the bond capacity that had been approved in the previous tax increase.
So that's a fascinating element of this, right? So the grand jury notes that in November of 2022, when the district put Measure U up on the ballot, Measure U was a 3.2-ish billion bond, right? The district had bonding capacity from previous bonds of, drumroll, $3.2 billion.
Yeah.
And as they've continued, so over these 4 bond measures, they've continued to ask for new bonds, as you said, even as they still had bonding capacity from old bonds. And that's what's also interesting about this duplicative language, because as they've added these new bonds, they've merged the project lists from each of these of these bonds. And so one of the things they noted that was totally fascinating to me is that there are projects being completed at the district right now that are using funds from all 4 bond measures simultaneously, which that makes it very difficult to ensure that there's accountability and that the district is completing the projects using the bond money that they were saying that they're going to complete these projects with. It makes it, kind of a whole
like you
clusterfuck.
take a little from here, you take a little from here.
Yeah.
And you track that.
And so if Measure U, so let's take Measure U as an example. There were some new priorities that were listed in Measure U. One of them was employee housing. Now, if you're using money from all 4 of these bonds, which they won't necessarily do, but they could, then you are using money from earlier bonds to fulfill this employee housing priority, which is not something that you sold earlier bonds for. Now, again, that is a completely hypothetical incident. I'm not accusing the district of doing this, but
if you use language vague enough, then they can't hold you accountable, right?
Yeah.
It's like, so it's again, what they do is they ask for the capacity to borrow money and the freedom to raise your taxes to pay that money off. And so in that case, what they did is they asked for capacity for Measure U or for Measure YY in 2018, right? Or 16.
Measure YY was 2018.
Yeah, so Measure YY in 2018. And then the capacity was still there to borrow and raise more taxes, but they went ahead and added more on just as like, we know we're going to need it kind of stuff. It's a
like
really...
just to have it.
Yeah, just to have...
We can pull it whenever we need it.
You can't ignore that there's significant pressure among the builders, the people who make the bonds possible in the financial world, that how much political pressure there is for them to like get these jobs, get these gigs. And now, look, there's a lot of great facilities, a lot of great sports stadiums.
Sure, and I think we all want kids to have like
Sure.
good classrooms and air conditioning that works and
like maybe some of
non-leaded
us
water.
experience being in like a little bungalow classroom.
Yeah,
like,
I
don't
did.
want your kids to be in those.
I did, and that stunk. Yeah.
Well, that was the other concern. I don't think they touched on this. Was like they would say we need to make schools safer.
Yeah.
And then they would get the money, and then they'd do that the next time. We're going to make schools safer because look at how scary they are. And it's like, and then or we're going to get rid of lead, and then they're like, for 4 more cycles, like lead.
Yeah.
Like it's like, why don't you do it?
Well, that air conditioning is the perfect example,
exactly.
right? So Will and I wrote a story last year. Last year there was a student at Garfield, which is a school right up the street from my apartment, who went to the hospital because of an air conditioner malfunction in their classroom made it so hot that they were having trouble breathing.
Yeah.
And it just highlighted the fact that despite the fact that the district had used identical language saying they were going to, revamp the air conditioning systems in all schools, malfunctioning air conditions and broken air conditioners is still a yearly occurrence at schools. And so I think a lot of this kind of sleight of hand that happens really undermines trust in a district when even if the district is doing incredible work to bring state-of-the-art facilities to students across San Diego County.
But it's like kind of like evil genius. Like they can say, well, yeah, but we have so many schools and because it's so vague, well, now we need to pass another bond because we still have a lot of schools that still need upgraded air conditioning systems.
And one of the troubling things here is that it is true that California does not fund schools enough for all of the facility renovations and maintenance that they need to do. There was a study that the grand jury cited that said that something like 65% of facility maintenance funds come from general obligation bonds that school districts have to pass. And so these are a necessary thing, and they do provide really good things to kids, but you got to make sure that you're operating these programs with a degree of integrity that makes people continue to trust in them.
Yep.
At what point does it reach like the voter and like your home, what's it called?
Your tax bill?
Yes. At what point does it reach your tax bill?
Right away. I mean, so let's say they pass a bond and they say, we're going to raise your property taxes by $6 per every $100,000, or it'd be $60 per every $100,000 of value you have. So if you have a $500,000 home, then you're authorizing them to raise your property taxes $300 per year. What they'll do is they'll borrow maybe a third of it, and so it'll go up $100 a year, and then they'll borrow another third, and it'll go up another $100 a year, and then they'll borrow another third and go up another 100. Over time, they'll do that, and so you don't know until that year like what it's actually assessed, and so over time it's added up quite a bit, and so I think that they won't stop until they lose, right? I think they'll continue to do this, maybe not this cycle in 2026, but maybe 28, another presidential cycle when they hope more liberal leading voters are voting, and everybody wants to support schools, and that's what I think is so terrible about this is people want to support schools, but their only mechanism to support schools is to build stuff. They literally cannot locally raise taxes, at all. Basically, there's a 2/3 threshold, but that's just too hard to hit. Without, just the only route is to support building stuff. It's just crazy that it's so easy to get the contractors jobs and get them money, but not actual teachers.
Well, and it's also all happening at a time when school enrollment is declining.
Right.
And so
what if they have to close a school that they rebuilt?
Right. Yeah. So that was interesting. There were a couple of my stories that were cited in the grand jury report, and that was one that was cited, the fact that over the past, I think, decade, the district has lost 12,000 students, even as they have raked in literal billions of dollars to build new facilities. So it's a very interesting grand jury report. You can go read all about it at Voice of San Diego.
So we've been talking for a long time about the giant budget deficit that the city of San Diego is dealing with and the controversy it's causing on the city council. It's so funny. They used to be Democrats and Republicans, and they would battle. But it seems like now that they're all Democrats, they're even like meaner and hate each other more. It's like there's something. They don't
have to pretend.
No, it's not even that. I think they genuinely dislike each other more when they're on the same team.
Yeah.
I don't like. There's a element of competition or something. I don't know, but they are not, especially between a certain group of council members and the mayor. There's just this like seething and palpable contempt in that chamber for the mayor. And I think vice versa too. Like they're not in a position of communicating. We'll talk about how like far that rhetoric got. But first was the revelation on Monday that the city is not only dealing with a budget deficit next year, but it is really bad right now, that they're receiving far less money this quarter in property tax, sales taxes. Well, property was okay, sales taxes and tourism income. And here was the mayor sort of kicking off this really upbeat meeting.
Revenues are not meeting projections. Expenses are up, and economic volatility for cities across the country has only intensified.
That came along with the announcement that they are now set to bring in $10 million less than they were. Well, excuse me. They're set to bring in $17.9 million less than they were expecting to. It's going to force them to automatically withdraw $10.1 million from their reserves. So a few weeks ago, it was like this big controversy that the mayor was even thinking of getting into reserves. And now it has to be automatically done because of how bad this year in particular is going. And there's sort of two main drivers. One, the sales tax has come in a lot lower than before. So any kind of things where we were looking around the country wondering if people were buying less stuff, well, there's a very clear indicator right there that they're buying either fewer things or spending less out there. And that's caused the city tax revenues to immediately go down.
Wow. And
they're spending more on overtime. KPBS had a bananas story about the overtime that cops are taking, where there's just, thousands of hours of extra time that they're taking to, because they want to, and they're making, one guy was making like $400,000. And
this seems like a perennial issue, right?
Yeah.
Every single year the cops,
they're short staffed and they'll say like, this is our only way to do it. This is, we've checked, we make sure they're not sleep deprived and accidentally killing people or something, but they're good. Don't worry. But thousands and thousands of hours of overtime. So overtime has piled up as well. And they've been on a lot more like strike teams, like these sort of special firefighter teams that go out and help in these disasters. And so it's all added up that those expenses have gone up. And also SDG&E is sending over a lower franchise fee check. And the whole city's like, I don't know why, like their revenues are down. They won't tell us. All we know is that our check was less than it was before. And so all of that is added up. They're going to have to dip immediately, automatically into their reserves. And Henry Foster, the council member, asked, he's like, what happens if I say no to the reserves? And they're like, you can't.
It's not a thing.
Yeah, you'd have to like come up with $10 million basically somewhere.
Isn't this the same thing he asked about the water rate increase?
Yeah, they're basically, he keeps saying like, well, what if I don't approve the water rate increase? That's,
and they
sorry.
keep saying you have to.
That's your job, bro.
So then like, what is your power?
Exactly.
You have to do the thing.
So this is the next clip I want to pull up. This is Vivian Moreno was grappling with just how significant this was.
I very much hesitate to utilize the reserves. We didn't even do this during the pandemic.
I mean, this is how significant this is. Like they are so bad off that they're dipping into a fund that they didn't even have to dip into during like a once in 100-year crisis where everybody lost their job. And it was just this like crazy moment in history.
Wow.
And so that's not a good indication of the mayor and his staff's ability to manage the budget that they already had, nor the urgency that was in place to like get things ready. And so now they're presenting this budget of like, okay, we're going to cut these rec center hours and these library hours, and everybody's mad about it. Now, we talked last week, Bella and I, about, yeah, they're mad, but they're not really presenting an alternative. So now they have like 2 weeks or a week or so to come up with their own vision of what they should do. And the independent budget analysts will collect all that together and tell the mayor, like, okay, here are the things we want to see changed in the budget. And then if he changes them, then they can approve or not. Keep going back and forth like that. But this is significant. Their budget deficit went from $258 million to add another $100 million. I mean, they're like, it's kind of crazy that they ran a tax rate increase last year and didn't at all mention that they were facing a historic, cataclysmic budget deficit that was like really going to rock the fundamental services of the city. And they didn't even mention that as like something at stake. At
the risk of beating a dead horse, I do think maybe they should have.
Maybe they should have. Or
like, you think?
Or maybe, and if that revealed, again, I've said this before, if that reveals that maybe that less confidence people would have in their management of the city, well, yeah, like that's it should, unless you're willing to like be just like, oh, hey, we've done everything, now we got to fix it. But okay, let's go on. So then
we tried, remember? We like tried to get them.
Pushed them so hard to say like, what is at stake? Will you have to cut deeper if this doesn't pass? And over and over again, they said, no, this is only for investment in stuff that we want to get built. Right?
Like the city will chug along the way it has always, but if we pass the sales tax, we can
catch up.
We can do better. We
exactly.
can do bigger.
Yeah, they basically made it seem like it would be cutting, ambitious projects they wanted to do and not, the core services that are currently being offered.
Yeah, so here was the leader, the general manager, Michael Zucchet of the Municipal Employees Association. Now, he's mad that a lot of positions have been filled during what the mayor said was a hiring freeze. And a lot of these are like middle managers or upper management. And here was his point on that.
we can count 28 program manager, program coordinator, and other unclassified positions hired by the mayor during the hiring freeze for only the most essential employees in mayoral departments that were non-public safety. That's a value of about $7 million of new staff during the last couple of months, including, and not all of those are general fund, to be clear, but including in general fund departments like the communications department, where two vacant program manager positions were filled. One of them just in April, a few weeks ago.
I mean, I do got to say that takes some moxie to hire a PR person during a quote hiring freeze of non-essential employees, like 2 weeks ago, right when you're getting the news that you're already $10 million in the hole from what you were supposed to be spending this year.
Well, that person's job was probably to tell everybody else that they can't hire anybody else.
Yeah, that's their main role. That was he was knocking them because they would send out this demand or this sort of warning to their employees, like, "Hey, we're gonna chop, like stuff's gonna get gnarly." And then they'd send out, and we just hired George, and he's
Please
great.
welcome George
he loves
on
fine
Slack.
cuisine.
Yeah,
it's just
yeah.
like, oh, geez.
Yeah, interspersed with like the dire, we are hiring nobody else, is a picture of George with his dog introducing, like, I like sushi.
Yeah.
Grey Poupon is my addiction.
So I think we're in this, like, yeah, obviously they've done a lot they've tried to cut quickly. They've raised the parking revenue. They've balked at creating parking districts at the beach and other places or Balboa Park. They're not ready to do that or whatever. But it's getting real, and I think it's gotten to the point where, again, remember this contempt I was talking about between the mayor and city council and vice versa. Well, this was Henry Foster. Again, we had him on the show a couple months ago. He's a council member from District 4, Southeastern San Diego. And he went to a place that I'm kind of wondering whether we're going to hear more like this soon. Here was Henry Foster.
I think the public also needs to look at the strong mayor form of government, because I'm not sure if it actually works.
Yeah, so I love how he said that too. He's just like, he's got this little smirk. I just said something interesting. Like
it's going to play on the Voices San Diego.
He's like,
this is a clip.
Yeah,
these nerds are going to love this.
Yeah,
just watch me stunt.
I think we need to take a look at the strong mayor form of government. And yeah, exactly. Like
the buildup is so good.
Boys are gonna love that. So yeah, it's out there.
Well, he's saying, like, I don't think this man's doing a good job.
I told you, I said that I think that the Mayor Todd Gloria's entire, like, I think he is trying to save the strong mayor form of government this year, like getting rid of the COO, grabbing hold of the reins like he supposedly did, and, really trying to get this ship right. Because I think if this gets even gnarlier or uglier, or next year's budget is just as bad or something, like, we're going to get to the point where, like, hey, okay, this little thing where the mayor's in charge of city staff, that didn't work well. Let's put a pro in charge again, and the city council can go and speech and all that stuff. So I think it's definitely, obviously him saying that isn't going to get there. What it's going to take is somebody with $1 million. That guy who spent $1 million on the mayor's race, he could change the city by putting $1 million into a strong mayor form of government initiative, or force the city council to hold a charter convention so that they can, decide on reforms like that. Because I do think, like, 20 years in, it's not looking good for the old strong mayor form of government.
It is interesting, if your goal is to save the strong mayor form of government, to fire the only other person who has, like, the potential to take any of the blame for everything that's going on.
Yeah, now it's on you.
Yeah, you're standing in front of a train with another person, and you push him out of the way, and you're like, I'm going to stop this train.
Yeah. I mean,
you're like, no, it's because, like, his shoes weren't grippy enough.
Yeah.
Couldn't really help me.
Jeez. I would get in a lot of trouble if we were suddenly like $100,000 short on our budget with a month left to go, like just not even being able to make the budget meet, or we had to go to get some special, like, endowment check or something. Like, this is a bad deal. Like, it is, again, it didn't even happen during the pandemic. So I think the severity of the crisis is really coming into focus, and there's going to be a lot of really interesting conversation in the next couple of weeks. We're going to take a quick break. Stay with us. I do think the budget deficit is kind of coming home for people. Mm-hmm. I'm getting a ton of people talking about the trash tax. That seems to have penetrated to the normals, right?
Lisa's brought it up at our wedding.
Yeah, that's the first. I was like, congratulations. He's like, why are we doing that?
Why are you guys?
I'm like,
you're like, I'm not doing
it.
Well, he knows what your contact book looks like.
Yeah, exactly. So, but the other part you've experienced. Yeah, people are talking about the mayor at the rec center.
Yeah. So it's funny, you go play basketball, and a lot of these folks are super cool, super nice, but they're not necessarily the most politically plugged in, and that's changed a little bit. There are now folks who have been putting up like little flyers and stuff, telling people to attend city council meetings to advocate for there to be no cuts to rec center hours like there are planned. And that's really frustrated a lot of people. And I've been witness to conversations of people being like, well, we got to vote Todd Gloria out. I mean, he can't cut these hours. Like, when is he up for re-election? And I'm just sitting there like, dude, we come from different worlds right now.
Like, it's a little late for that.
Yeah. Maybe 7-8 months ago, this could have been a conversation that you could have had constructively. But back then, maybe if they would have mentioned that Measure E was essential to keeping rec center hours, that would have influenced a couple votes. I don't know.
It is, and the trash tax too, right? The trash fee. If they had gone forward with that, and I heard so many people say like, oh, they're punting that till after the election because they don't want to have to deal with it. Well, yeah, like if they had been last year dealing with this during the election, where there's like this people furious that it's double what they estimated it would be, and that they're going to start paying for this. It might have actually had some impact, and so you see why they make those decisions. Yeah. Well, we'll be following it. Well, I don't think there's been any longer standing public affairs storyline in San Diego. Well, there's a few, but the Gaylord development of a hotel and convention center along the Chula Vista Bayfront has been a very long public affairs saga in San Diego. Up and down, unions fighting, unions getting on board, politicians not being on board, master plan of the port. Nobody knew what the master plan of the port was until this project. Succession of Democrats and Republicans leading Chula Vista, all excited about it. It finally opened. From all accounts, it's just a gorgeous facility.
Yeah, I've seen videos. They've got like a giant water slide.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It looks pretty bland.
Did you know that the water park is actually because of some deal they had to make that
No.
you can go as the public. You can just go and pay like $10.
Okay.
Up to a certain capacity. So because of the access issues that they were fighting with the coastal
up to a certain capacity, so they have like a limit on normals that can come in.
Yeah. So
beyond that, you have to book a room.
Yeah. It's probably
other than that, you have to be there for like a defibrillator convention.
There's a lot of those things. Like you go to the Midway Museum, you're allowed to go up on the deck of the museum for free. They have to escort you, and they're all like, "What are you doing, man?" Like. But I bet you it's some deal like that. You go and ask for
you're
it.
Like, you want to be on my port?
Oh, hold on. I'll call Bob and see if you're allowed to really do this.
We have a townie here. Can I let him in?
Yeah. But and the rooms are not cheap. I don't know if you saw that too. It's $400 or $500 a night.
That's a lot.
But it's a beautiful facility, and it's something Chula Vista's been waiting for a while.
It like stands above everything. Like,
yeah.
So tall. You see it from everywhere.
Yep.
It's huge.
And but right next to it is a development, also hotel and apartments, or residences, condos maybe. And our Jim Hinch noticed that the mayor of Chula Vista has a company, Coronado Shores company, that does property management, real estate, broker, sales, all that stuff. And it had incorporated or filed papers to do business as the same name as the company that was going to be selling those condos.
Yeah, so it registered under the San Diego County Registrar's Office under the name Amara Bay Real Estate and Amara Bay Property Management. And of course, the name of the project is Amara Bay.
Amara Bay. Now, the company building the project says that it has no connection to that company. When we asked McCann about it, this is what was interesting and the hook of the news. He said, quote, "I do not run the day-to-day operations for the Coronado Shores company." And this is what really stuck out. "I have divested my ownership in the company." Now, he discloses the Coronado Shores company as his, top source of income and investment equity. It's worth more than $1 million on his economic disclosure form, and brings in more than $100,000 per year. And now he's saying that he divested his ownership. Well, the owner is his wife. Now, I'm not sure how that works. Like, you divest from your wife, like I know some people keep different accounts and stuff like that, but they're still like, you're the same. Like, that's kind of the deal. You're just joining. You're going through all this, you're joining together all your stuff. So we asked him to clarify when he divested his ownership, and he did not follow up. His wife, the owner of Coronado Shores Company, didn't as well.
Do you think that means that he's like refusing to enter portions of the house that were paid for by funds from this company?
Yeah,
like
I don't know what it means.
Can't keep track of it.
Divestment usually means you sell it, so you got a bunch of money from it. But I don't know, like, does
he's like not drinking the almond milk that was purchased with
they pour out like 60% of the almond milk on one thing. That's the not.
Sorry, this is Amara Bay Real Estate, almond milk.
Got to keep it clean. Got to keep it clean. But McCann, like so many of Chula Vista's mayors, has been, a big advocate for the redevelopment of this area and this project. So,
yeah. So he said, now look, just naming it that Amara Bay doesn't mean anything. It'd just be like if you named, your company San Diego Plumbing or something. You can say San Diego. It doesn't mean anything about their stake in the project, ownership, or whatever, and that's fine. But I think the fact that this company he has decided he doesn't want to have anything to do with financially, which is his wife's company that he lists as his primary source of income, that's news, and it's worth following. So again, just a really interesting story from Jim Hinch, our South Bay reporter, and he's digging into both the candidates of the campaign for District 1 and the County Board of Supervisors as the future of the county is at stake there. Well, Jacob, the Grossmont Union High School District, we've talked about, they were going through some cuts, but one cut recently was kind of a more interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, this whole story's been pretty fascinating, and it's garnered a lot of media attention, I think, primarily because of how much public pushback there's been, right? The district has been going through this messy process of layoffs to fulfill what they say is a budget deficit, and it's enraged a lot of the community who've shown up like en masse to these board meetings. And I think a lot of that is because there has been this sense among many in the community that the district has been mismanaged and sort of managed in a way that caters to kind of the conservative ideology of the lion's share of the board members. And so as this board is trying to power its way through this layoff process, I got some tips about a very interesting sort of arrangement with one of the top administrators at the district, the chief of staff. This memo was leaked from a law firm, written by a law firm to one of the board members, that detailed the sort of sketchy inside dealings of that district's chief of staff. So to tell the story, you kind of have to rewind back to 2018. There was a teacher at the district named Jerry Hobbs who was investigated. The Union Tribune was able to get a hold of the investigatory documents. He was investigated essentially for potentially saying racist or sexist things. He resigned. The Commission on Teacher Credentialing, which basically determines whether or not a teacher's credential is valid, chose not to take his credential away, but still he, resigned from the district, ended up working at a law firm. That law firm ended up doing work for Grossmont, so for his former employer, and ended up doing work investigating the administrator at Grossmont who had launched the investigation into him. And this guy, Jerry Hobbs, worked on that investigation. That investigation then determined that his former boss, who had investigated him, had engaged in retaliation against about 24 different employees, including him. This is where it starts to get even stranger, if it wasn't strange enough to be investigating as part of a law firm the person who investigated you. The law firm, for whatever reason, decided that it was very important that Jerry's name be cleared, and that it was very important that he be able to be rehired at the district should he want to be rehired. And so the head of the law firm, this guy named John Howard, told this guy Jerry Hobbs to basically create a settlement that would allow him to become rehirable. So Jerry Hobbs goes off and starts drafting his own settlement. It comes back to the law firm, and that law firm interacts with another lawyer, an education lawyer, and they kind of make some edits. And the thrust of this memo that was leaked from John Howard accused Jerry of kind of surreptitiously inserting language at the last minute into this memo, language that would guarantee Jerry a tenure on his first day of reemployment should the district rehire him. And so that was kind of what this memo was all about, accusing him of inserting this language that seems to be illegal, essentially.
So he got to investigate the person who investigated him.
Yes.
And then somehow in that process is able to get a settlement that says, oh, you got to hire him back.
You can't, yes, it clears him to be rehired, yeah.
Yeah.
And give him tenure.
And give him tenure, yeah.
Hey, and it worked.
It worked, yeah. The next month, the district hired him in this director position, this sort of ill-defined director position that was, from what I understand, kind of supposed to be this ombudsman for special education. The month after that, they promote him to chief of staff. He, at that point, was making almost double what he was making as a teacher. And all of this, again, happened over, the course of just a couple months. And so it was just this very, very fishy, very sketchy situation where potentially he had surreptitiously inserted language, but then the district, for whatever reason, just hired him back to an extremely high-level position almost immediately. Now, his tenure at Grossmont was pretty short-lived. He was hired back in December of 2024, but the week that the district put the final approval on the layoffs, they also approved another new settlement agreement for Jerry that would have him resign in exchange for a year of severance, so $186,000. So it was a pretty sweet deal, I think, for him, regardless of how you look at it. He got the settlement, was able to be rehired, worked for a while, and now gets $186,000.
Well, is it done? Is Grossmont done with this angsty moment, or?
I don't think so, and certainly the public doesn't want it to be done. They have launched a recall effort against 4 of the 5 of the district's board members, including the ones who voted in favor of hiring Jerry, voted to bring him back into the district, and voted in favor of these layoffs. And part of it is this layoff thing, but layoffs happen at a lot of districts. Oftentimes district budgets change, and especially right now when a lot of districts are kind of grappling with the loss of the pandemic funds that really kind of floated them for years. It is not at all a rare occurrence for layoffs to happen. But again, I mean, there has been such at least in the mind of some community members, such a focus on political ideology at this district over the past couple of years that any sort of trust that the public had that board members were acting in the best interest of the district has kind of been gone. And so they've launched this layoff notice, or they've launched this recall notice. They're doing their best to gather all these signatures, and it will be a really, really interesting story to follow. So they may be done with Jerry, but I certainly am not done with the district.
Appreciate that. Well, thank you all. It was fun. Congratulations again, Ms. Sanchez.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Voice of San Diego podcast, the most popular public affairs podcast recorded in the demilitarized zone, the contested territory between Cortez Hill and Greater Little Italy. It's the most popular public affairs podcast recorded in that troubled land. I'm Scott Lewis, CEO and editor-in-chief at Voice of San Diego. Andrea Sanchez Villafana is our managing editor. Jacob McQueen is the education reporter and theme music composer. And Xavier Vasquez, the excellent producer of this show. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week.